Hi, I'm Dave with Louette, and I wanted to talk about the quality of our wood products when it comes to the Erica, the S17, our unfinished products. There are several others as well. It's not that everything is perfect, just like the lacquered products. We're well known as a company for having very high quality finish on all of our lacquered spinning wheels, weaving looms. But with the S17, with the Erica, with our unfinished products, we're trying to bring products to the market that are at a lower price point, but the quality of the finishing is not quite to the same standard and is to be expected. So let me show you some examples of that. Okay, here are a couple of examples. This is a side of an Erica. You see how there's a little bit of chipping here and here. That's the kind of thing you can expect. Some more over here. And you've got sandpaper that comes with the loom, and the idea is that the user will sand this smooth and remove the issue. Okay, and that's the kind of thing. Other examples, here you can see a little bit of chipping. Here's another example. Maybe it's on this end. Yeah, just a little bit of chipping out of the sides here. With the S17, we've got a knot here, a little bit of difference in the quality here. I found a front post here that's got a little bit of an issue, and I think that right here as well. That just needs some sanding. On the Erica, again, there's another really good example here. And this is high quality birch plywood. That little bit of gapping here has nothing to do with the stability or the quality of the wood itself. It just, you can use some fill, you can just sand it and leave it. It's not going to damage over time because of that. So it's just something that we wanted to point out so that the expectations of the product are set and expected. Okay, so here we have the two uprights, and I just wanted to talk about the orientation of these so you get the bolts in the correct holes. We're going to put the bolts with the rollers on in these holes. So I have these oriented, so this is the bottom with the large hole, and then you've got a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes, smaller holes. These two are countersunk. This is the correct orientation, bottom, top. Now, if you turn these slightly, the one from the right is going to go on, you're going to turn it to the right. One from the left, you turn to the left. You see the holes that we're going to put the bolts into, right here and right here. Okay? Now, I've taken the liberty of putting the wheels, the rollers on these, one lost roller, on the bolts, and so you put 4 rollers on each bolt. These are the only bolts in the kit, so you can't mistake them. 4 rollers. Now we're going to take the vertical and place the bolt in the hole, give it a little hand turn so it's snug, and then take your 10mm wrench and turn the bolt, and you want to turn it all the way in so that the rollers are still able to turn but don't have a lot of play. So now I've got them, you see you can just move them a little bit, they spin nicely, and that's about what you want. So now we're going to put one in the bottom and continue on to the second upright as well. Okay, so now I've got the rollers all assembled. I've completed this one where I've hammered in the dowels, and I've put this knurled nut inside. I'm going to show you how in the other video. When you install the loom, we're putting this eye bolt in from this side. but for the assembly we start by putting it in on this side. So let's just go through that. So I've got the knurled nut screwed onto the eye bolt and pre-positioned in the hole here a little bit. Now I'm going to hammer it into the upright so that the knurled nut is completely inside the upright, and so it's like a little even deeper than quite flush. Okay, just a little bit. So here we go. Okay, so I'm pulling out the eye bolt. Again, when we assemble later, we're going to put this eye bolt in from this side. I can't do it quite yet because I first have to put the wooden plugs, wooden dowels into these holes here. And yeah, there are 6 wooden dowels, as I've indicated, 3 on the one that I've already assembled. And now we're going to put these in. Now you're going to hear a difference in sound as I finish tapping. This has to go all the way in, and the hole there's an end to the hole. It doesn't go all the way through. You have to tap this in till it hits the bottom of the hole, and you hear a change in the sound when you get to that point. So let's just do that. There's a light thud. See, that was a very definitive difference in sound, and that's what you're looking for. Then you know it's completely inside. If you don't have it completely inside, then you may have difficulties folding up the loom later on. There it is. There it is. And now, to finish off, we take the eye bolt and we put it inside, and you give it a few turns so it's not going to fall out. Now we'll do the same thing with this one, so you've got the left and right sides complete. Yeah, one last point. I took 6 dowels from the package. There are more, and you'll use those in later steps. All right, now we're going to talk about the position of the rollers. These rollers are used to guide the shaft cords from the toggle to the shafts. There's a different position required for 2 shaft versus 3 shaft versus 4 shaft. And we're assembling a 2 shaft, but I'm going to show you the positions of 3 and 4 as well. So for a 2 shaft, we're going to start with number 1 and number 2 here from the right side, and these 2 from the right side. On a 3 shaft, you're going to go on the other side. We're going to start 1, 2, and then 1, 2, and then 1, 2. And on a 4 shaft, you continue from the 3. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay? So now let's do this for the 2 shaft loom that we're working on. And the rollers do have to turn, so we just loosen them a little bit like that. So it's snug, and then back a half turn. And that's it. We'll go on to the next step. Okay, so now we're going to put the rattle together. A couple things. Need a hammer again, tape measure. We have to mark the middle point of the rattle first. So I've got a tape measure from end to end. we're just over 13 inches, 33.7 or 0.6, 33 centimeters and 6 millimeters. So we're at 6.5 inches, just a hair over 6.5 inches, or 16.6.7 centimeters. So I'm just going to use a, oh yeah, you need a Sharpie or a felt pen. Forgot to mention that. So here I'm going to mark the position. I just made it a light mark so that I could make that a little clearer. I'm just going to mark it on both sides. Now I'm going to take the first rattle section. These are 10 centimeter rattle sections. I'm going to count in 10 segments. Here's the middle, and I'm going to put the middle right in the middle. Just try to press it in. It should just be a bit of a press into the groove, and then you can tap in the rest of the way. Now we're going to put the next piece in right beside it, and the key here is you've got to get it right up against so that there's no gap between the two pieces. So start on the outside, push it in, and that'll kind of push it right up against like that. And you see I did this one completely with my hand. I didn't use the hammer. You can give it a little tap. Gentle tapping is required, not heavy hammering like we had to do with the wooden pegs. So push it in a little bit here and then give it like that. And that's it. Okay, so here we are. So we're going to assemble the castle section. I've got 4.5 by 45 millimeter screws, 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, and the 4th is pre-staged. Got the rollers for guiding the shaft cords, 2 uprights, and the rattle. So we're going to screw, and the one thing to note is the position of these things. It's very important that you don't. It's very easy to put this on the top position or upside down. That's something that happens quite a bit, is this upside down. So you're looking at the front of the castle in this position. The eye bolts are facing inward, the dowels are facing outward, the rollers are facing up, and we've got, like I said, the rattle facing upward, and the rollers here facing upward. Upward being, this is the top, this is the bottom. Okay, orientation complete. Now we're going to start screwing this together. So this is the front, this is the back, and we'll attach the other side. Do the rattle first, and then we can do the toggle lock. We're going to put this in not completely snug, just to give us a little block correctly. So the rollers are facing here. This is where you're going to attach the hinges for the toggles. And bring this up, stick a screw through, and tighten it up. Oops. Other side. And one more tip about orientation. Now, remember this one I left a little bit loose. Tighten that up. This is the front, as we said before, okay? One point to think about on the rattle, you see how this front side doesn't come very far around the vertical. On the back side, it comes back around, so its position is important that you don't turn this 180 degrees around, otherwise the shafts won't be able to rise. This will interfere with the movement of the shafts, particularly this one here. Okay, so that's the completed castle section. Okay, so now we're going to attach the toggles. These are the toggle hinges. Got the pivot point for the toggle and the blocking point for the toggle, and they're going to get screwed into the positions here. Now, regarding the position, the toggles need to be mounted so that they're in front of the guiding rollers. For a 2 shaft, we're going to use 3 toggle hinges, and we're going to put them in the middle, 1, 2, and 3. For a 3 shaft loom, you'd use the first 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for a 4 shaft loom, you use them all. Okay, and obviously with each extra shaft, you get another hinge and another toggle. So, first step, take hinge 1 and put one of the screws in place. Now with these screws, you got a bag full of the same kinds of screws. I think there's 4, 8, 9, 12 of these screws. You only need 3 for 2 shafts, and the rest are used later on in the assembly. So we're going to put this in place. There we go. Let's guide it into the hole and screw it in place. And there's a little lip on the hinge right here. That's got to be over top of the wood just to get it in a good position. Okay, so I'm going to do another one, but if we put this in place now, well, then we'll never get the toggle in. So we're going to show you first how the toggles fit together. You put this hole on the toggle in the middle post of the hinge, and then you would put a second hinge in place. The toggle moves like that. So since we've already got one mounted, now I'm going to take the toggle, put it on here, and then take the second hinge, put it through. Now the hinge is in a good position. I don't know if you can see that. So that we can put the screw in. I don't know if you can see the hole in here, but we just put the screw in place and we don't knock it out. There we go. Screw the screw in place. Toggle is nicely seated. And again, you see the lip of the hinge over top of the support bar. Now we're going to repeat that process. Take the next toggle, put it in place, rest it on the resting post, put the second post in place, toggle or the hinge seated nicely, and screw it in place. And voila, we're ready to roll. Okay, we're going to assemble the shafts now. We've got the new plastic molded shaft sides. This is the biggest change from the original assembly video for the Erica, and we wanted to make sure we went through this and show the differences. The old shaft sides were wood. They're the laminated plywood, and they did tend to split a little bit on the top, so we wanted to get to a better construction that's going to be more stable. It does make a change though. You no longer need the eye hooks, and our bolts are 12 millimeter instead of 10 millimeter. If you have received, in our transition, if you've received 10 millimeter bolts, and you'll know this because you'll also have the eye hooks that aren't needed with these plastic molded shaft sides. then you really need to turn them, tighten them really hard in order to get them to stay in place and have the shaft core stay in place. Or you can give us a call and or send us a support email and ask for the 12 millimeter bolts. So we're going to put 12 millimeter bolts in place first. Here's the inside of the shaft side. You've got a kind of a funny looking piece in the top and then an oval and a round part here. You're going to put the nut in here. Not sure if you can see this. And then we're going to take the bolt and put it in from the top. The nut can't move when you put it in like that. It can't go anywhere, so you don't have to try to hold it with a wrench or anything like that. So it's nicely positioned. So we're just going to, I turned it all the way in just because I was talking. Just put the bolt in slightly so that it's being held in place. Not going to go anywhere. And we're going to do the same thing for the other two. Slip in the nut. I should say other three. Okay, and now we're going to put the elastic cords in place, and we start these. This is the top of the shaft side, bottom of the shaft side, and we're going to put the cord through the bottom of the two holes. There's two holes here. You're going to put it in the second one, as the shaft cord goes through the top one. And we're going to run it down, and you see here there's a little piece of plastic that goes across. That's to prevent the elastic cord from slipping, coming out of here and holding it in place nicely. So again, second hole from the top, guiding that through. See, second hole from the top, and then through the guide. And then we're going to make a slip knot here. Square knot. I call it a slip knot. Right over left and under. Left over right and under. And we can tighten that up and reduce the length of these. It slipped out. There we go. And I made a mess of it, so we'll do it again. Right over left and under. Left over right and under. The elastic is very lively here. So here we go. Now you've got your elastic in place, and we're ready to do the second one. And we'll do that off camera and come back. Okay, so now we're going to assemble the shaft sides assemble the shafts and put the heddles on. So we've got the orientation of your harness ends. This is the top side. I'm going to flip one over like this. Put the shaft sides over here. These are the 6 millimeter shafts, so the thicker of the two sets of stainless steel bars that you have. If you use the thinner 5 millimeter ones, then they will fit very loosely in these holes. They need to be snug. So here you have a bottom hole, and all the way in the bottom you're going to put the shaft side in like that. And they go. They're snug, okay, but they can be removed, but they're snug, and that's what you want. You certainly don't want your shafts falling out while you're using it. Next, I'm going to take the bundle of heddles, and I'm going to insert the shaft like that, so that the heddles are in place. See, this one slipped off, so it's a little bit of a tricky deal. There we go. Now, what you see about the heddles, these are Texolf heddles. They have ties on 4 places. That's so that your Texolf heddles don't get all mixed up and tangled. Basically helps keep them organized. Do not remove the ties until the heddles are on the shafts. You saw as I was just putting them on the shafts, half of it fell off. If you had removed the ties, well, you'd be in a mess. So slide these on a ways, okay, and then we're going to split this bundle of 100 heddles on 2 shafts, okay. You have 2 bundles, you have 2 shafts, you could put 100 on, but on a 30 centimeter loom, 100 heddles is quite a lot, so you may not want to have that many. So that's why you would need to split them. So what we'll do is we'll take the second shaft and we'll insert the rod of the second shafts in here as well. So like this. And next we're going to undo the ties because the heddles can no longer fall off anywhere because we've got shafts coming from both sides. And then we are going to separate, and it's your choice. You can count exactly 50 and 50, or you can eyeball it. I'm going to eyeball it right now. That's about half and half. And then I would cut this so that you have 2 separate halves, and then we can take the next step of separating them completely and then assembling the 2 shafts.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to continue here. I'm going to cut this and spread the heddles forward off so that you have the 2 shafts. And now I'm going to take my other shaft side and stretch it and put the top shaft in that hole. Whoops. See, the elastics are under tension as you're doing this. And just push these on. Like I said, some are a little snugger than others. Okay, and you can guide this along. Now, next step is cutting these loops so that you can, because right now if I try to spread these heddles out, they're tied together, every one is tied together, and it makes it more difficult to move them around. So make sure you move this elastic so you don't cut it. So I've got it held with my one hand, grab the scissors, and I'm going to cut these loops. Okay, now we're going to attach the shaft cord through the toggles and attach it to the shafts. Shaft cord, fold it in half so you have equal ends. Then a little trick, take one of the
Strips.
these things and make it nice and flat and small. You're going to put the shaft, put it in from the back of the toggle, and this just makes threading that cord easier. All right, now you can take this off again, and we're going to put it over top. And next we're going to thread the toggle cord. You can see that I had it originally like this, and it's coming off in a crossed manner over here, and that's not what you want. So straighten it out, put it through, and then you're going to split this off. And we're using the second roller because we're using the back shaft, shaft number 2 in this case. This is shaft 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you're using a 2 shaft loom, you're using 1 and 2. If it's a 3 shaft loom, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And we're just going to put this in place and then lay it down over here like that. Next piece is the harness itself. We're going to take the elastic and put it over top of the roller. Again, second roller, shaft 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing on this side. Put the elastic over the roller. Now the harness is just going to stay here like this. Next up is putting the cord through the top hole. I'll orient this a little differently so you can see that. Through the top hole like that. And we're going to make it just a little bit snug like this, and then tighten the bolt, the 12 millimeter bolt, because that's what keeps the shaft cord in place. And we're going to make it snugger a little later on. The same thing on the other side. Back on roller number 2. Tighten this up a little bit. And now it's all sitting in place. It's not the way we want it just yet, but that's at least now it gives you something to work with. Next thing is adjusting the actual height. See, right now you're resting on the rollers. Where we want this to be is about 3 millimeters above the roller, so kind of like this. Now I'm providing a little bit of tension to do that, like that. Notice now my cord is nice and slack. So I'm going to stretch it out. That's about where I want it. I'm going to press down and tighten this up a little bit and tighten my bolt. So it's going to hold in place. I'm going to go back and do the same thing on the other side. Pull this up a little bit to the approximate 3 millimeters. Yes, I understand it's probably a little bit more than that, but fine tuning of positioning we'll do later on when all the shafts are in place. And so, call it 5 millimeters, call it 3 millimeters. It's close enough for now, just to get things in place so they're not jumping out of your hands. And tighten that up. And you see we've still got some gap there. On the other side we've got some gap. It's floating, it's on its own, and that's what we're looking for. Okay, and so now when I pull on this, pull the toggle down, I'm lifting my harness. Okay, I do that a couple times. Now look, it's resting back on top of the roller. So that's what I mean, the fine tuning of this we have to do once we've got the shafts in place. So now we're going to go back and put the cord through the first toggle and attach shaft 1, and then we'll come back in a different video and show how you do your fine tune adjusting. Okay, so now we're going to do some fine tuning of the shaft positions. The bottom of the shaft needs to be 3 millimeters above the roller, and right now I'm looking at this position and that's darn close to that, so I'm happy with this side. And we're going to measure the same thing on the other side. And this one, I'm using the start point of 5 centimeters. That one looks a little bit too great, so I'm closer to 5 millimeters. I'm going to back this off slightly. The way I do that by removing, or not removing, but loosening this nut and then pulling on this cord so it comes out ever so slightly. You only have to move it a couple millimeters and then tightening it back up. Then in order to get it to move nicely, I'm going to lift and drop the harness a few times. Everything settles into place, and then we can measure again. And we've got, yeah, we're down about 1 millimeter, so it's a little bit not quite enough. So do the same process again. Pull this out a little bit. Now it's dropped and tighten back up. Now we look at it again. Now we're under 5 there. That's closer to 3 millimeters. So I'm happy with that one, but as you can see, the second shaft is right up against the rollers. So we need to tighten that one up. So we're going to move in the opposite direction. So I'm going to loosen this bolt, and then I'm going to grab the cord here, and I'm going to pull from this side in order to I didn't loosen the bolt enough. Tighten it, and once you've got one harness in place, looks like I still didn't loosen it enough. Still going on. Once you've got one harness in place, you can basically adjust this to the same position. Hold that, and I'm going to put my thumb on the cord so it can't move, and then tighten my nut. Now, you can also do these adjustments with Castle in the loom later on, but for the video purpose, I thought it'd be easier to do this before we got the Castle in the loom. But I do believe that making this fine-tuning adjustment is a little easier with the Castle already in place in the loom. Loosen. It's funny how tightly it still holds. Now I'm going to try to adjust it to the same position as the lower one. And now we've got, and if we look at both harnesses are not touching the roller. They're in the 3 millimeter range above. That's what we want. Okay, so now we're going to set up the sides of the loom, and then we'll assemble the sides of the loom. So the first step is to take this bushing, and that's going to be the axle point for the, or the hinge point rather, for the beater, and tap that in. And one of the dowels, and remember this is, pick the right hole. I mean, it doesn't fit in these other holes, so there's 2 holes that it could fit into, and one of them is this one. So always look at the position. It's right in the corner here for the bushing, and the dowel goes up more in the middle, closer to the groove here. Again, listen for that sound. Now I want to show the difference between the sides. You've got the right side that has a hole right through, and the left side that does not. And the hinge point here that I talked about for the beater, that's in the front, so that's how you know this is the front of the loom and that's the back of the loom. These holes are where the warp and cloth beam are going to be placed, and we'll do that next. Alright, so we're back here, and we're going to put the the little feet caps in place. So first you take one of the bushings and one of the screws. Do we have the size of that screw?
25 millimeters.
That's a 25, is it 4 by 25?
Yes.
4 by 25 millimeter screw. Put that in place as I just did. You're going to take one of these caps and just slip it over top. And that's what the loom is going to sit on. So on the one hand it's kind of a foot, but it's a cap that goes over top of the bushing and screw assembly. And then we'll do the same thing for the other side. Okay, now we're going to work with the warp and cloth beams. They're identical, so there's no one or the other. Take one, look for this hole, and we're going to put one of the dowels in that hole. Notice the sound difference. Okay, now that piece is completed. Set those aside for the next assembly portion. So I'm going to take the right side and one of the dowels that are going to be used for the back beam and the front beam, and they're again identical, so just pick one. We're going to use the 4.5 by 45 millimeter screws. So stick one in, see it's countersunk, so it'll be flush once it's tight. I always like to just stick it in, and then you've got lots of space to see what you're doing here. Give it a little connection, hold the two together, and screw it in. Hold it a little different to get a little leverage. You can always use an electric drill for this piece or for any of the connection pieces if you prefer. Now you can see this has been scuffed a little bit. That's exactly where you can use your sandpaper to clean that up. Next we're going to take the one of the warper cloth beams, stick it in the hole here like that. Same thing back here. And then we can take the left side, or the left side, and start to assemble. So we pick this up, put it inside the hole there. Same thing on this side. And then everything can come together. Now you take one of your screws. There's still two remaining 4.5 by 45 millimeter screws. If you move this too much, it falls apart, as you can see just happened to me. So try to put it in a position where you're going to do the final screwing. Get this connected a bit first and then we'll reposition. Do this again. There's a little bit of play there, you can use that space. all together. This one snaps around so you can see. Slip that in. And we're doing the same thing again. Finding that hole and tightening the screw. So now we have a completed Okay, so now we're going to put the ratchet wheels on the warp and cloth beam. You can see I've pre-assembled this one. I haven't screwed it in completely yet. There's 3 pre-drilled holes right here, here, and here, and you're going to line up the ratchet with those holes and insert one of the 15mm rounded head screws. You can see it's not the tapered head. It's what we call in Dutch a bolkop. And screw that in.
Hardware bag 2.
And these items are in hardware bag 2, and I'm not going to tighten it completely so that we can just fine tune the positioning. And then we'll go back and tighten this up. And that's set. Next we're going to take one of the pawls, and here is the screw hole that you're going to put the pawl into. And this position here, there's a magnet here. You can see it's a fairly strong rare earth magnet, and that is designed to keep the pawl in place. The pawl is going to be sitting like this. You can see it'll stay even without the screw, just because that magnet is so strong. So I'm going to put the screw in the pawl and screw it into place. Now with the pawl, you want it to be able to move. You don't want it to have too much room to move, so you tighten it completely like this, and then just back it off half turn. So it's got a little bit of movement. You can see it's just, and that clicking you're hearing is the last second the magnet is grabbing it, pulling it into place. It holds very nicely. We've been using these ratchets and pawls for over 30 years. They've been on the spring loom, the David loom, the Jane, the click. Very positive.
Counterclockwise direction. Turning counterclockwise.
We're turning this counterclockwise, yes. That's we try to turn it clockwise, the pawl keeps it, flip it out. So that works very well. So we'll tighten the screws on this side now, place the pawl in. Magnet on this one as well, this side. Tighten it, doesn't move, back it off, there we go. And the last step is to put the beam handles in place. These are a flat head screw that we're using. There we go. Okay, now we're going to attach the tie-on cords. First of all, we want to use the correct loop here. So we want to use the first usable loop after the cut. The cut happens over here, which is before the start of that loop, and therefore we can use this loop here. If the cut were to have happened a little closer in, then you'd have to move on to the next loop, but this one will be strong. I've got a screw already in place through that first loop, first usable loop, and we're going to put that in hole number 1. In theory, you can put the screw in first and then put the cord over top, but my big fingers get in the way and I find this easier. So it's up to you which one you prefer. You do want the cords to be nice and snug. So you want to turn it in like that. Now, you don't want to have the cords, you do not want them down facing downwards because when you are tying on, you want to come over the cord like this, which means that you need the cord coming out this way, so you can, if you tighten it a little further, then they're not going to move around too much. But the bottom line is direction like this, not halfway, sideways and then tight, because then you'll have shortened the length of the cord, and then your various cords won't be the same lengths, and that'll cause your whole weaving to be crooked. So now we're going to take another screw and we're going to put it in the next loop, and at the same time take the next cord and do the same thing. And we'll put that in place. And so in goes this, and then we'll see how I've got it. I had that one cord facing the wrong way, so pull them both in like this. Now we're going to tighten it the rest of the way. And then we can do the same thing with the next one. Yes, my big finger's getting in the way here.
This is just one.
Last one on both sides has just a single cord. And I'm going to go and do the same thing on the other end with the final 3 cords. So you see here we've got everything tied up now. The cords need to flow to the back of the loom on the front beam, or this is the front beam. It would do the same thing, flowing to the back of the loom, this one here as well. And this little test you can use to see if the warp beam is indeed parallel. You can see that it is, so that the tie-up cords are all the same length, because the distance here is the same as the distance here. So that's all good. The other thing to remember when you're putting your first warp on, a lot of people with Erica looms, it's their first weaving loom, the warp always goes over top of the back beam before you put it through the reed and tie it on. In the same respect on the front beam, you're putting it over top of the breast beam, not underneath. Otherwise you won't have a shed. Okay, now we're going to put the castle in the loom. So we're going to take these dowels are going to go in this groove on both sides, and this is, you're going to see why it's so important that these dowels were fully inserted. So we put it on top and guide the dowel in the hole, and down it goes until you hear it stop. And it's not because the verticals hit the table, it's because the groove ends here and that bottom dowel hits the bottom groove. So we're going to go like that. And then the last step would be that these eye bolts, you turn them in, and these will prevent the castle from being removed. And what's happening is that the dowel is extending, protruding here, so that it can't go up past that. So it just locks the whole castle down so that it can't be removed. And it makes it nice and secure. There we go. Put together the beater. The beater is this frame, and that fits into the bushings right here, and right here you just bend it a little bit out so that it fits in there, and consists of these two wooden parts. One has the Erica logo on it, one does not. The holes, I mean, these are the same size, they're identical pieces actually. One just has the stenciling on it and one does not. And the holes need to line up like that. So what we're going to do is going to take the reed, put the beater like this, put the reed in between. You can do this also first without the reed and then put the reed in later on, up to you. So we just line it up like this, that way the holes will be lined up. Turn it around, grab the last few screws here and insert. I guess it's only 2 screws for the 30 centimeter version. The third screw is needed if you have the Erica 50. Several cases where you may end up with an extra screw or two. A lot of the screws we package by weight, so therefore there'll be it could be an extra. We always round upwards so that you have an extra screw as opposed to not having enough. But there you go, there's the beater. And now I'll show you how you fold the loom. So we're going to put the beater forward. We're going to undo these eye bolts again. And we're going to lift the harnesses, lift the castle out. You're going to use the top dowel here, and you're going to put the dowels back inside